start by having you tell us a little bit about your background. He already indicated that he remembers when he was a young kid, as many young kids attended the Peoria Barber College, not to become barbers, but to get clipped. And for maybe 50 cents. Good morning, first of all, Robert.
Good morning, Mr. Monroe. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak with your audience. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. How old were you when you went to the barber college?
Oh, we were down there. It was young because back then, and it wasn't 50 cents. It was 25 cents.
25 cents. Well, you really got the cheap haircut.
Well, that's all they could afford back then. As I said, my dad worked at Caterpillar. He was a World War II veteran. Came up to work at Caterpillar. Back then would recruit a lot of people from the rural South.
And where was your father from?
He was originally born in Coleman, Alabama, moved to Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. He served in World War II. He suffered a massive head wound in Africa. As a matter of fact, it was just luck. Life is very funny. When you had a massive head wound in World War II and you were in triage, nobody was going to look at you. And it was a young surgeon, found all this out after he passed away, a young surgeon who wanted to try something on him, put a steel plate in his head.
You're kidding.
No, he was blind for about 6 months. My grandparents received a letter from the War Department that he had been killed in Africa, regained his sight, came here and worked at Caterpillar and worked 2 jobs his whole life, and he raised 7 children right down. He started in the Harrison homes, and then they moved out to the end of Laramie and Krause, which was next to the old Faro abandoned gravel pit. So we grew up down there on Dead End Road, and it was just big families back then. We had 7 children, and I was thinking as I was coming over this morning, it's amazing when you go back and start thinking about your past, because I remember every single family that lived on that dead-end street, whether it was the Whitbys or the Dexon-Becklers or the Showalders or the Howes. You remember those things, and that was part of my past. We spent many, many sunny, bright days. It was South Park back then. Now it's Tree Wind Park, and we would get on our bikes and we would go down to South Park. And again, you remember these things. It was Peg Roberts that was running recreation for District 150, and we would go down and play tetherball and softball. And if you know anything about the South Side, down at Tree Wind Park, huge hills. So in the wintertime, we would be sledding. In the summertime, like most kids back then, we would have bike races to see who could get to the bottom quicker. And there were a lot of mishaps, but you just get back up on your bike and ride it back up the hill and turn around and go back again. But that was part of my past. I attended St. John's, and I want to plug in for the former students at St. John's. They're having our first reunion at the Elks Club this Friday. And it's anyone who attended St. John's, and of course they printed t-shirts and things like that. But of course, St. John's closed. I was down at St. Anne's for a mass last week, and I was telling the priest down there, I said, I stopped at St. John's when we were kids. It was Father Gordon who was running St. John's at the time. When you were kids, you thought that the church and school were as big as castles, and you go down there now and you see these little concrete pads, and you think, well, no, it had to be bigger than
difference.
That. Yeah. But that is part of the reason. Part of my campaign is hometown raised, hometown proud. I'm the hometown candidate. Been here for 3 generations. I will tell you, somebody asked me the other day, and of course times are changing, and with the millennial attitudes and things like that, somebody asked me, did you have a gap year? And I looked at them and I said, I actually had a gap day. I graduated from Limestone on a Tuesday, and I was running a D9 West tank at Billing KK on a Thursday.
No kidding.
And that's what we did back then. I mean, you went to work, and like I said, back then, for people who don't understand the history of Peoria County, back then it was more of an economic dividing line. You were either blue collar or you were white collar. And most of the people in the zip code I grew up, 61605, we went to work in the factories at Caterpillar or Keystone, Wabco, all of those types of things, and that was the start of my life.
Yeah. I want to go back, if you don't mind, Robert, to your father in Africa. That's a part of World War II that a lot of people don't realize, that we had American troops fighting in Africa. And I remember watching a movie, not that the movie is necessarily accurate, but you remember that's where initially Rommel made his reputation, did he not, as a commander of a tank battalion or division in Africa?
Yep, Rommel was the German general that I think they took over most of North Africa, and then it was the Allied forces that eventually pushed back.
Yeah, the story about your father's amazing. That could be the basis for a wonderful movie about what he went through, and did he ever talk about his war experience in Africa?
The only thing we found out afterwards, basically what happened, he was on a ship and it was being strafed by a German bomber, and they asked for volunteers to go out and close the hold, and I think 6 people volunteered. He was the only one that survived.
Wow.
With this massive head wound, and like I said, he carried a steel plate in his head for the rest of his life. And that's what that generation, I've told people, in America we've been blessed. When the American people needed good, strong leaders, people would step forward. And it was, you go back, and that's one of the reasons I was telling somebody, being a third-generation Peorian, you have to understand the history, and you have to understand even like Caterpillar. And I ended up working at Caterpillar 4.5 years. This wasn't a summer job. In between then, and it was only because when I was working at Caterpillar, I told somebody at that time, they convinced me it would be better to move to Morton Parts. And it was. They said it's a cleaner facility. So I left Bill and KK and got off of production and went out there, and they said, this is a great job for a young guy like you. So I was throwing track shoes 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. And I started then because of public education. I started taking part-time classes at ICC. By the time that was over with, left Caterpillar and transferred to the University of Illinois. And then
to law school there?
Well, I received my bachelor's there, and then I went to law school at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, and then came back. And I was telling somebody this story the other day. I came back May 1st of 1981, which is, for those of us who are Peorians understand, difficult times back then. And I remember somebody saying, the last person to leave, turn the light out.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know who the cheerleader was Jim Maloof, who said, I'm not going anywhere. Well, I came and I opened up an office on my own, been self-employed for now 43 years. I've practiced law throughout the state of Illinois and also throughout the country. I've tried cases in Tennessee and Florida. I became known as the lawyer's lawyer because when lawyers needed help solving problems, they would hire me. So that's what I've been doing, a very, very broad practice of law. And so now I'm running for state's attorney.
What motivated you to go from the lawyers to want to run for Peoria County State's Attorney? What was the inspiration and the motivation?
I was blessed to have contact with a person that truly had a public servant's heart. Jerry Brady had the heart of a public servant, and Jerry Brady was an excellent state's attorney. I can give you one story, and I've been waiting to tell everybody this, how he viewed the office. I had a client who shared a lake out in Chillicothe with his neighbor. They get into a little bit of a dispute, and it's getting a little bit more rambunctious. And I received a call from Jerry Brady saying, why don't we bring these people into my office? Now, nobody was charged with anything, but let's see if we can talk through these issues with them. We did, and the issues were resolved without any more issues as far as who owns the lake and things like that. So that was part of it, and quite frankly, I never would have ran against Jerry Brady because Jerry Brady did an amazingly good job. Like I said, he had the heart of a public servant. I believe now we don't have that. And what we have now is an absentee state's attorney, to use an old South Side line, who appears to me to be more interested in a meal ticket than anything else. In public service, and I believe in public service, and I believe in leadership. My leadership style is a real simple one. I lead from the bottom up. I truly believe rising tide lifts all ships. the job that the state's attorney has, and I'm just going to put a plug in for this election for all your listeners. Understand sometimes, and I understand national politics gets all the publicity, but a job like the Peoria County State's Attorney's Office will affect the quality of the lives of the people in Peoria County, be much more direct and much more impactful than any national election. But I happen to believe it's an office, and a lot of people really don't understand much about the office. It is a staff of 55 plus with a budget of about $6 million. Well, we all know that you have to have leadership ability because I would never, in all the jobs and going back to my experiences, which I think are important, I also carried a union card from 165, labored on construction sites in Peoria, worked in the factories, even, and this is some people know what this line means and some people don't. I even worked as a Gandy dancer for the Chicago Northwestern Railroad. I was a section laborer for them.
That's hard work.
It's hard work.
It's
hard work, and I was telling somebody the other day, part of the problem with it is you burn up in the summer and you freeze in the winter because there's no protection anywhere. You're out in the middle replacing rails or pulling out. Everybody in life, I guess, should go out and try to dig a switch tie out with a pick and a pry bar and find out it's a lot of work.
Hard work, yeah. And plus you're dealing with creosote, which can be a chemical. I wonder why there have been, you hear lawsuits on certain cancer-producing chemicals and products and so forth. I've never heard a lawsuit about creosote. I'm sure that's about as unhealthy a chemical as you can play with.
It probably is loaded with carcinogens, but I don't think there's any big company that is behind it, so there's nobody to sue.
Yeah, you can't make it. What's the old saying? You can't get blood out of a turnip, or
exactly.
For that matter. What do you see are the issues you talk? I think one of the issues you suggested is you're going to be a full-time Peoria County State's Attorney. What other issues you believe are present in this campaign?
Well, one of the things, and what I promised everyone, is I've been blessed with the ability to work hard, and was probably inherited that from my father. As I said, he worked two jobs. He used to have a little home repair business that he would run from about 7 in the morning, and then he'd go in and run a machine on second shift at Caterpillar. So I've worked hard my whole life. I am going to continue to work hard. I think the biggest part of it is we have had, in this particular state's attorney's office, we have had an unprecedented flight from what appears to be a toxic office. As I told you, it's 55 plus. That's what's budgeted for in the time that the state's attorney has been in office from September 1st of 2019 to now. Approximately 40 people have left that office. They would be hired and they would leave the office. The names are available. We've tried to get the names, and they are out there to ask the people, why would you leave? What happens? So it is truly an absentee state's attorney who not only doesn't show up in the courthouse, but never goes into a courtroom. My job is to recruit really good people, diverse population. You have to have a diverse state's attorney's office because there's so many different people in our society in this day and age. My job is to recruit them, train them, mentor them, and retain them, because it doesn't do any good for us as the county to hire assistant state's attorneys and then after they're there a while, they leave. That is when, and it affects our system. I mean, I'm in the courts every single day, and we're having problems because there are just not enough assistant state's attorneys to prosecute the cases. That is one of the issues. And like I said, part of it is, I think, being hometown raised is, my opponent is, as she says, is from a small town in Nebraska, 231 people. Well, I grew up on the streets of Peoria, and like I said, that's what I'm going to bring, is the leadership, the ability to prosecute. Also, you have to understand, we have issues now, and obviously part of my campaign is Safe Homes, Safe Schools, Safe Streets. We all know, as the Teachers Federation said last year on August 23rd, we're in a real emergency cycle here. Somebody needs to step up and take control. We have gone now from random acts of violence, where if you look on the streets, we've had our high schools. Manual was riddled with gunfire. We now have people, whether every day you look, cars are being hijacked. We have children that are being kidnapped. We have our schools being shot at. We have our police officers being shot at when they're investigating crimes. And we all know, and one of my favorite lines is this: it's a small group of people causing all the violence. For the rest of us, the shooters keep shooting and we keep ducking. I guess the question is, when are we going to be tired ducking?
And then there's the issue of spending all the city money on organizations claiming to help solve this violence, and then they disappear with the money, right?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the House of Hope, and those are issues. And I'm going to tell you something. I've been traveling around. I didn't realize this until I started traveling around. Peoria County is 633 square miles. I know because I've been to every city in Peoria County. Now, the city itself is about 50 square miles. But when you think about that, 633 square miles, and of course, everybody has different issues. And what we're doing is, and I'm a big fan, I attend the Mayor's Safety Network at District 150. Everywhere I go, there are volunteers who are willing to try to help us have safe homes and safe streets. I believe that this state's attorney's office could be the people's office. We have a lot, and what you're talking about is whether there are funds being focused on dealing with crime and things like that, but it's very dispersed. And the Mayor's Safety Network, I thought, why couldn't, if you had a state's attorney who truly believes in serving the people, that it's the people's office, why couldn't we have that down at the Peoria County Courthouse? We have the county boardroom. Why couldn't the state's attorney bring all the groups in? And let's see, are there some places that people are duplicating efforts? They're very good at one thing and somebody else. Why couldn't you have that? I also think that with technology, and I was telling somebody the other day, we have to help and protect all of our agents, not just the police departments, the city and the county, but also our religious-based institutions, our social organizations, our teachers. I told somebody the other day, we invest in the future through our children. So what we teach them now is reading, writing, arithmetic, and also how to duck. Well, when you stop to think about that, it is like, what are we telling our children? So mine, as I've said before, we aspire to be more. We aspire to give our children the same chances that I had. And I'm going to tell you right now, it was not easy working at Caterpillar and working construction, going to school part-time. It takes a lot of resiliency. It takes a lot of hard work, but you have to be committed. Abraham Lincoln said one time, the future is determined by choices, not by chance. And what's happening right now is ignoring the problem, as we all know, it doesn't go away. We have individuals who have worked hard their whole life that have paid for their homes, put up fences so that their grandkids can come over and play in the yard. They can't do it because of the threat of violence. And I told somebody, when I golf, I do golf at Madison Golf Course, which is about a mile from where I grew up. We have a tremendously attractive park district. What a lot of people don't realize, the parks are like Disney World for working class people and poor people. It's where you go on Sundays. I told somebody, if you're from here, if you remember Sunday morning baseball, Glen Oak, you couldn't even find
Bradley Park
and Bradley Park. You couldn't find a seat. There were people out there and on. And I raised the issue that it's a situation that we're ignoring the people who need it most. And my opponent said, you're exaggerating it. And I looked and I said, what about shutting down the fireworks at Glen Oak Park because of the threat of violence? Yeah. I said, those are the things that for our people, it's always been quality of life. And it's always been one to where people in Peoria, they're kind and they're considerate and they're willing to give and they're willing to help. And it seems like we've lost that a little bit.
You know, you touched on something interesting. From my perspective, I used to be on the county board. You mentioned about bringing groups and organizations in the county board room. That's exactly what I did with the late Chuck Schofield, who was Peoria County Sheriff. We had a 23-member committee of public safety, and we met, and various organizations from the city, county, the park district, the school district, and other agencies like Children and Family Services, and we met to try to find programs and ideas to prevent crime and violence. Relatively successful, but perhaps that's something that you would want to lead the charge for.
Well, it's one of the things somebody has to step up. I mean, and one of the things I've said as far as being a great role model, Jerry Brady was involved. Jerry Brady helped so many groups. Everywhere I talk to charitable organizations, and Jerry would write letters on their behalf and things like that. Because, like I said, he had the heart of a public servant. And those are the things we need to do because, like I said, if not, what are our children doing? We all look at this and we look back, and it's all an investment in the future. Well, 20 or 30 years from now, will the people of Peoria County look back and say they had an opportunity to do something and they did nothing? They just said it. Now, I'm not some pie in the sky that we're going to agree on everything, but if we can agree on certain issues to where we lengthen the table, we bring people in, and we listen to them respectfully, and we ask them what their ideas are. It's like everything else in life. You might have 5 ideas. You might try 3. They don't work. You keep trying on the 4th one. Guess what? It works. I was telling somebody and again, because coming from here, it's like, I think it was last year when the Central Lions boys football team finished 2nd in the state. Why can't we as a society invite them down to the courthouse square? We cook cheeseburgers and brats and look at them and say, thank you for representing us in the state championship. Thank you for being as gracious in defeat as you are in victory. Those are the things, because for a lot of the kids, they just need somebody to look and say, it's been a hard work, but we truly appreciate it. You never know where the spark is going to come from to where somebody says, you know what, if I do well, people will appreciate that.
And we'll conclude this, Robert Boucher, candidate for Peoria County State's Attorney, the Republican candidate, by asking, well, we ask every candidate, why should people vote for Robert Boucher?
Well, if people want to have good, decent, honest public service, that's what, I am not a politician. I'm not going to stand here and give you all those. What I offer the people of Peoria County is years and years of experience, and also my ability to be hard work and also to be respectful and try to bring all of the people of Peoria County together, because we all want the same thing. We want safe homes, safe schools, safe streets, because without those, nothing else really matters. And government's primary responsibility is to protect its citizens. And if government can't do that, then what are we left with? So I'm offering to bring people together, and let's try to see if we can take back our streets.
Robert Boucher, on behalf of my dad's Peoria Barber College, we want to thank you for coming and shopping with your family at the 25-cent chair, which, by the way, was way in the back of the room at 422 South Adams.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. You bet. Thanks for coming in, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Everybody have a blessed day.
You bet. We'll be right back.
Cars